Hi, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to the bonus clip from our Rap Pod recording, where our panel has bravely been going back over Saturday evening's Champions Cup semi-final. Now, we've already harped on a host of topics, but we've held a couple back, and we're going to start with Rich, who is going to look at the officiating from Saturday. Was it an issue, or should fans be focusing on it at all?
The most controversial subject ever, before Hugo starts on his his one. Um, Listen, as supporters, when you're watching a match, you're always having a go at the ref. The ref that doesn't take, if unless the ref takes a decision in your team's favor, then it's that person is the worst person on earth and parts of the known universe. The fact of the matter is, and my philosophy on this is a very simple one. If you're reduced to blaming the ref for your team losing a match, unless it's the tightest of matches and one silly decision ends up costing you the game, as it did yesterday, because in my very humble opinion, if that was a yellow card, that was a penalty try to us. I don't think that the grounding by Ross should have been given as a try, but I do think that Josh was prevented from scoring, from stretching out, because the TMO actually tells the referee, should it be a penalty try? And the referee says no, because he was short. There is a difference between being short 5 meters out and being completely unable to place the ball on the line or beyond it.
It's also how were you short?
Yes.
By somebody that was fouling you.
Yes, Josh was short by half a meter. Had he stretched out, and he didn't even need to use Ericus Nijmen telescopic arms for it, he was on almost at the line. Then if he has been prevented from being able to at the very least attempt that, then it has to be a penalty try. Especially, you can't have it both ways. It's either no yellow card and just a penalty, or it's a penalty try and a yellow card, which is what should have happened yesterday. So you can have situations like that where that happens. The point I'm making is that you shouldn't allow yourself as a team to be placed in a situation where a wrong decision, or indeed a right decision by an official, costs you the game. You should place yourself in a position where that becomes completely academic. And ordinarily, we do that excellently. We are so far ahead of teams that even a bad decision or even a good decision doesn't cost the game, because it was never going to cost you the game anyway. Whereas if we don't play well enough to put ourselves in a position where any refereeing decision becomes academic, then don't. The problem isn't the officiating, although officiating, as we know, has its issues. The problem is that you haven't placed yourself in a position where you render that completely academic. That's the point that I'm making here. Yes, you can moan and groan as to the interpretation of the laws, as to how a particular situation is interpreted by one referee and then completely differently by another referee, especially in scrums and the breakdown. Some referees will allow you to get away with stuff. I mean, I'll give you another example. When Josh scored his try in that first half, Max Deegan held that ball up on the ground for 10 minutes. I obviously exaggerate. That shouldn't have been allowed. So, but we got the benefit of that. Another referee will say, no, whoa, you're on the ground, you're out of the game. You can't just hang on to your little ball there and eventually wait for. Obviously, the Saints player should have been a bit more cute and tried to get the ball off him, and then we would have given a penalty away. So it swings and roundabouts. So the point I'm making is a very simple one. Put yourself in a position where any refereeing decision doesn't affect the outcome. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we're talking about this in the bonus clip rather than the main pod, because I don't, because there's a fine line I don't want to ignore that decision at the end altogether. I don't think it should be, but I think it's important. We spoke a lot on the main pod about how it was Northampton's performance, how how they deserved to win on the day, and how it was Leinster, like you say, Leinster didn't put themselves in a position to where they didn't need that kind of decision at the end of the day. But separating it, when you talk about, we also spoke in the main pod about how you play in the clutch and how you play in the big matches, and for the referees, for officials, that decision at the end, that's their version of the clutch. That's where they've got to get it right. And I think our discussion over that isn't so much whether we agree with what he was saying, but it's having determined what he says happened, his ultimate decision from that is what's up for debate. So I think the two things can be true. Leinster shouldn't have been in that situation, but you can disagree. You can disagree with the call at the time, and I think that's fair enough. Okay, well now Hugo is going to answer a question that I have to say more and more people have been asking each year as our European campaigns have ended. Should Leo go? We actually did a full video of that this time last year. I think Mark Jackson had a bit of a rant on it. What do you think about it, Hugo?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing to say is the more extreme version of the commentary on this sometimes settles on Leo Cullen is not a good coach, and that is, first of all, not true. Even with the undoubted talent and kind of expensiveness of squad at his disposal, the reality is sport is full of teams that are full of superstars that are badly coached. And that don't reach even the levels of slipping, that don't reach even semifinals or finals to slip up in them to begin with. A case in point this year in the URC is the Sharks, who have a team full of Springboks, but who look badly coached and who do not look anything like the sum of their parts. I don't think that has been ultimately Leinster's problem. I think there are always going to be decisions that you kind of disagree with and etc. But I don't think the core problem is that we have a bad coach at the top of this. I think one of the questions is, what is Leo Cullen's actual role in this team? And I think this has always been something that's been fairly unclear to kind of people outside the immediate Leinster setup. The apparent appearance is Leo Cullen is kind of more of a director of rugby type, kind of has a more kind of macro picture on this, with Nienaber kind of taking over day-to-day squad selection, etc. Certainly the way Leinster are playing at the moment is in line with Nienaber's philosophy, rather than a kind of a particularly Cullen-esque one. So part of the question is, if we were to sack Leo Cullen, actually, is that really affecting the kind of the day-to-day, or the kind of the actual match experience all that much? I certainly don't think we should be sacking Jacques Nienaber. I think that was a good appointment to begin with. I still have some questions, and I think we saw a little bit in the defensive breakdown yesterday about whether Leinster have the players to play the kind of ultra blitz defense that he wants to play with. With that said, it has worked pretty well up until yesterday. So I think there is often a kind of a knee-jerk response to this, the kind of like, oh, we need to get rid of the coach to kind of this. And I do think that one of the things you do hear from people who are far more informed about the kind of Leinster setup than I do is that Leo Cullen's role throughout Leinster as a whole, his kind of decisions kind of beyond the kind of the match day squads, the role he plays in helping to develop and bring through talent, etc. And again, I'm only hearing the second hand, but that is actually very important to why Leinster have actually kind of got to where we have in the last few years. With that said, this is a results-driven business. It is maybe the most results-driven of all businesses. And if Leinster were to get to the end of this season, having yet again failed to pick up silverware, there's always factors, there's always reasons why you don't win a particular tournament. And I do think sometimes it gets forgotten amidst all this that we do have other very good teams to play as part of these things. It's not just a question of us showing up and then kind of underperforming. We've come up against some very good teams in the last few years, and they have played a role in our downfall as well as our own mistakes. But much is made, and it is true that we have what is probably the most expensively constructed squad in world rugby. We have a team full of internationals. The team yesterday was almost entirely Ireland, Ireland, New Zealand, France, or South African internationals, and the kind of the one of the few players in there who wasn't in that picture was Tommy O'Brien, who has been playing out of skin. So, ultimately there is clearly an issue here. It is clearly an issue where this team for 4 years in a row has fallen at the final hurdle, has kind of let slip games that we should not have been losing. I think, while much is made of the fact that, we've been losing a lot of finals recently in the Champions Cup, the fact that we haven't reached a final in the URC for a few years now is in and of itself a fairly kind of humiliating outcome to some of these tournaments. So I don't know what my answer is on this one to kind of give a really kind of on the fence response. I don't think that all of Leinster's problems are down to our coaching staff. I don't think that a knee-jerk firing of coaching staff is necessarily always the best response. But ultimately, you are judged on outcomes, and the outcomes clearly have been not what we would have wanted. We've gone into every single year for the last 2 years, where doing a European double has been, the kind of the primary objective, and well within our on our ability on paper, and it hasn't been happening, and it hasn't been happening in the most gutting way. And yesterday was, Richard, you mentioned this on the main pod. Yesterday was my worst day as a Leinster fan since the 2023 final. It was a truly, to let slip a game like that, to not even make a final, to potentially bottle this year, was a really hard one to take. Something needs to change. I don't know if it's as simple as a coaching staff point, but the reality is, if we finish this season without silverware again, then Leo and a lot of other people within the Leinster setup are surely going to be under a huge amount of pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm kind of hardwired to push back against the kind of knee-jerk online reaction of hashtag coach's name out, which is, it's become a kind of a stereotype kind of thing, and it is very simplistic. But like you say, that said, it's a high pressure job, high pressure province, expected to win trophies. So when these knockout results keep happening, you're going to expect this kind of examination, which I suppose you could call it a colonoscopy, so to speak. But sorry, sorry, I should really
This has got to come with a health warning.
should really cut it there. Now, listen, I'm going to finish with a comment just from the other side. That we got lots of comments on Leo at the coaches in general on the Facebook page. We're going to leave it with a comment from Richard Collin, who said, "Useless today." This is from right at the final whistle, by the way, so you can understand the tensions were high. "Useless today, and tactics were terrible. That's down to the coaches. Given team and budget, the players and management get judged on performances in May, and they weren't good enough." So that's the kind of that's the other extreme end of the opinions we're seeing. So I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more about that in the future.